Hey everyone, my name is Grim, and today I am going to share with you the adventure that I've been on in Greymoor. Creating this build has been a process, and okay, so first of all, it's going to be a lot of builds. Oh my gosh. Trix just hopped into the background of the video while I'm shooting. Okay, gonna be honest, I've been procrastinating this video for a long time, and a big part of that, Trix is being an idiot. A big part of that is because this patch has been really weird, and like last patch, I felt like my build was just it. It was exactly what I wanted to run. It was the strongest thing I could imagine. I tested a lot of alternatives, and while things did work and were functional, I really felt like nothing touched the Clever Alk New Moon Balorg build. I really felt like it was next level, and so I was very content running it. This patch, it doesn't really feel like the case. There are a lot of builds that are really good, and they all feel like they have some small weakness of some kind, and that is both a good thing. I think it's really good for the health of the game, but it's also mildly unsatisfying as both a content creator and a PvPer who just wants to have like the best build ever. Pretty annoying to not feel like I just have nailed the best build ever. But I've got a bunch of really strong options, and you can kind of tailor this to your playstyle, and hopefully, you learn something like I have. This patch has been wild. So let me just take you through where I started and what changes prompted me to try out different options and where I've kind of landed. So when I started, I usually, when a new patch comes out, I keep everything the same, right? So for my build last patch, I was wearing Clever Alchemist, Balorg, and New Moon's front bar with the Master Bow back bar. There's a new Master Bow, it's perfected, so I got the perfected Master Bow, but everything else is the same. I switched my New Moon Acolyte Maul to Nirnhoned, but I was still wearing 4 Impen, 3 well-fitted, all triglyphs with all infused weapon damage, and then the food I was running at the time would be lava foot soup and salt rice. I run that with 5 points into health, usually. You can go up a little to 10, which drops you down about 1k stam, and then pops you up like 1.3, 1.4k health. Also, has anyone else noticed this bug? Like, see how my character's jaw is like broken and off to the right-hand side, and it makes it so he has this weird smirk on his face? I hate that. Zos, can you fix that bug for me, please? It kind of goes on and off. It's not like always there, but when it is there, it makes me feel really stupid. And as you can see, I'm a guy that puts a lot of time into the way his character looks, and so when I've got this going on, it makes me unhappy in a very real and potent way. Anyways, back to the build. Sorry. So 2 heavy, 5 medium. The reason for that is that we want to take advantage of the very unique Shadow Barrier passive that we have as Nightblades, which gives us an extra essentially 2 seconds of Shadow Barrier, which is Major Resolve. And you can see I track that in the bottom left corner here. So I get 9 seconds when I use a Shadow ability of having dramatically improved resistances. And that's a big deal. I feel like 2 more seconds on that is worth a lot more than 2% stamina and 2% magicka, especially when I have so little stamina and magicka in general. Like, it's not a max stat build. I'm not a Magisork. I run pretty low max stats. 2% stamina and mag isn't that much. You get the same percentage increase in health by wearing another piece of heavy armor, so there's actually no change there. If you run Undaunted, so 5-1-1, you get the same amount of health as running 5-2 with 2 heavy, because heavy passives give you the same percentage increase in health per heavy piece that you're wearing. So anyways, this is what I was running last patch, and it's what I started on this patch. For the first week, performance was horrible. It was terrible performance, and so that felt pretty bad, but the build itself worked, right? No one had really ground out mythics yet. People were still running like the same amount of critical percent and crit damage modifiers. Like, basically everyone was running the same thing, and so this felt pretty good. But as the patch went on, I'm running into these Malakath dot DKs. I'm running into groups of people that are wearing sets that give them ludicrous damage because they're in a huge Zerg, right? I felt like I was lacking mitigation. I was getting bursted in one global cooldown at times by huge Zergs. Now, at some level, this is always going to happen. You know, when you're fighting outnumbered, you're going to get bursted. You know, like if you're fighting 20 people, all they have to do is all land one light attack and you're dead, right? So, but basically it was happening too much from my preference. I always like it to take, you know, if there are 3 to 5 people on me, I want it to take 2 global cooldowns to kill me so I have a chance to react, right? If I'm getting bursted in 1 second and I don't even have a chance to react or heal or try anything, that's too fast. So I wanted a way to mitigate more burst. There are a couple ways to do this. You can have passive flat mitigation, or you can be a little bit more preventative. So that meant one of 2 things. I either had to increase my resistances, or I had to increase something like health recovery or healing done, or maybe magicka recovery so that I can cloak more and make sure that shadow barrier is always up, that, you know, I can always afford to have a shade out. Maybe I can cloak just half the time, and that makes it so that people have a much harder time catching me, so that 1 second where they can all burst me happens less often. That was the direction that my mind was going. So mythics are new. Mythics are cool and new. So I decided, let's try a mythic. The 2 main ones I was looking at were the Torque of Tonal Constancy and the Wild Hunt Ring. The reason I decided to primarily test out the Torque of Tonal Constancy was because the idea is that I could run this, and then I could, with this, run the Steed Mundus. I would no longer need the Serpent, which I had been running. I could now run the Steed. And so that's what I did. And instead of getting 15% movement speed in combat, which is when it actually matters, I would get 10% movement speed in combat and a line of health recovery. This felt pretty good, but that thick perennial scroll, sorry. That felt pretty good, but I was still getting bursted. Health recovery by itself wasn't enough to to mitigate burst. It doesn't mitigate burst. It just gives you a hop, essentially. Healing over time is a hop, and while the movement speed was nice and prevented some damage, and the extra magicka recovery was nice, it did prevent some damage and allowed me to use magicka a whole lot more. I had 2 major problems with this setup. The first one is that in a one-on-one, it's extremely difficult to keep a lot of pressure up on tanky targets, because I'm relying on the Torque for stamina recovery, which means I have to keep my magicka low. The only way for me to reliably keep my magicka low while still maintaining the same skill bars, which I felt like they're the best. There aren't many magicka abilities I'd be able to sub in, but I had to cloak like once every 5 to 6 seconds to keep my magicka below 50%, because I just don't have that much magicka, and I have so much magicka recovery, and if my stamina is low, my magicka recovery increases by 450, and then I'm just like always topped off on magicka, so I had to like double and triple cast cloak. So in a 1v1 against anyone tanky, it's a very tricky fight, right? Because I can't just keep pressure up without burning through all my stam, and that wasn't amazing. And then though the Steed was nice, it wasn't as nice as I thought it would be. So my next thought was, okay, well, how can I either heavy attack more or, mitigate damage more? And so I switched from running the Steed Mundus to running the Lady Mundus, which gives you resistance. It was one of the very few things that wasn't affected at all by the changes to defense that they've been making over the last couple patches. And the Lady actually feels really, really good. Let's see, I don't have it with me, but it does 2,700 resistance. That's what it adds. And running that with the Torque of Tonal Constancy in this setup felt pretty solid. When I run the Torque, what I lose is the Master Bow. And the reason for that is, you have to think, when you're running a Mythic, are you going to give up a 5-piece, a monster set, or your 1-piece back bar? And for me, it's a no-brainer. The Balorg is almost a 5-piece. Balorg is so strong, and it got a huge buff to damage this patch. So getting rid of Balorg over the Master Bow is just stupid. Don't do that. And so then I thought, well, should I run like a 4-piece set? Don't run a 4-piece set. 4-piece sets aren't good. It's the 5th piece that is worth as much as the 2 through 4 combined. Not always, but usually. The fifth piece is what should really, really matter. It's worth like almost 3 times what a normal line is on like an average set. So like, instead of adding 1,000 health or 130 damage, the 5 piece will add 675 damage with the small proc condition. You can just see it's many, many times more powerful. So running a 4 piece is really hampering your ability to do damage. So what I did to run the Torque is I dropped the Master Bow and I put the 5th piece of Clever Alchemist on the back bar. That means I've got 4 pieces of Clever Alch when I'm on the front bar, which means I don't lose that 4-piece damage bonus. So I'm getting the exact same damage on the front bar, just minus the Master Bow. The caveat is now I have to use potions on my bow bar to get that buff. It was a little bit of a habitual learning curve thing for me because I've been using it on both bars for so long, but it's not that big a deal. Once you start getting down the, hey, I have to use potions on my back bar, it's fine. Everything's fine. And you get really good damage. Of course, you are losing damage, and that didn't feel really good. But between Tonal Constancy and the Lady, I had significantly improved my tankiness. And this is a pretty good build. I like this build. So again, this is just New Moon front bar with the Nirn Maul. I changed from Sharpen and Nirn this patch just because the healing, like getting a little more defense felt worth it versus giving up a little more damage. Whereas in the past, I didn't feel like it was. Generally, I'll run as little recovery and defense as possible and get as much offense as I can without feeling like I'm going to be dying in one global cooldown, in 1 second all the time. So, New Moon front bar, Clever Alch back bar, 4 pieces on the front, 6 pieces on the back, technically, because the bow counts as 2, so you're getting 5, 6. Tonal Constancy with an infused weapon damage glyph, and, Balorg. Still running 4 Impen 3 Well Fitted. I may have changed that around a little bit. You definitely can. Earlier on in the patch, running more Impen still felt good. And then as the patch has gone on, and there are less people running crit, and there are more people running things like Malakath, because they're finally getting it. They're grinding out the stupid scrying and excavating, and they're collecting all the little pieces they need, and they're finally making their Malakath bands. Crit is becoming more and more obsolete to defend against. Not useless, but you have a bunch of it built in. So you don't have to do it in armor as much. You can run less and less and less as the patch goes on. So I started adding more well-fitted pieces, some sturdy pieces even, and I like all that. I'm still kind of playing around with it. But at the end of the day, though this build works, and I'm happy with it, and I use it sometimes, I don't like Tonal that much. I felt like I was over-sustaining and under-damaging. And even though it was good, I wasn't happy with it. So I decided I do really like the Lady, but this seems like an inefficient way to sustain it. What if I try a set that I've been running on Magicasauric and really enjoying? I want to try running Engine Guardian. So the next build I went with was this Engine Guardian build. And this only changes a few things. I'm now running my old 2 5 pieces, New Moon on the front bar, and Clever Alch on both bars with 2 pieces of jewelry. I get the Perfected Master Bow back, and now I get the Engine Guardian mask. What does this do for me? First of all, I have a lot more health recovery, and that's pretty good. Now if I'm using the Steed, I'm getting a substantial amount of health recovery. It's all buffed by CP, and that's really nice. But more importantly, Engine Guardian itself is like just free line of sight. The proc rate is so high that it shows up all the time. It feels like it's always active. There it took a lot of things, but it's like a 25% proc chance. And it's always going to be giving you a resource and tanking for you. So it's targetable. So when you're getting chased by enemies or even one enemy, and you're just like casting abilities and playing normally, this thing is going to be up all the time. And everything is useful on Stamblade. Not all classes benefit from Engine equally, but it's good all the time. If I'm getting extra Magicka, that means I can like cloak more and shade more and, use my Magicka defense a lot more freely. And if I'm getting stamina, it means I don't have to worry about my sustain as much. No more heavy attacking. I can just go all out and attack for the entire duration of the stamina one. And then the health actually got a huge buff. and it gives you a ton of health. So if I'm getting the health buff, I'm invincible for like that 3 or 4 seconds, and it just feels really good. Engine Guardian I found was tanking about 20% of all incoming damage while it was up, if not more. And I'm sure if I like abused it more intentionally, I could get more out of it. But it really does feel awesome. When you're using Engine Guardian, you'll feel the defense that it's giving you. And so I really like it. I like it a lot. The problem, again, and the reason that I'm not running it right now, is because even though, again, it's really good, and the extra sustain I was getting from this allowed me to drop the Serpent and run the Lady, I was just still losing so much damage, and I didn't like that. So there are 2 options. First of all, one of the main reasons I'm losing damage is because Balorg is gone, right? And I get the Master Bow back, but so I've got better average damage, better average defense, better average recovery even. But the recovery is a little inconsistent because you never really know if you're going to get a stamina proc. So I know one person using Engine Guardian used to say, you're either going to get, you're either going to get lucky and you're going to get a sweet 1vx clip, or you're going to get unlucky and die. And that's just kind of the nature of Engine Guardian. I found that to be partially true. You can mitigate some of it, but it is inconsistent. No doubt about that. I do think it's more consistent than it used to be because the proc chance is up and you just have more procs in general. And even though they do less for you, save for the health one, they're all useful. They're all useful, but it's inconsistent. But losing Balorg is a lot of damage. So you can do 2 things. You can trust an Engine Guardian to mitigate enough damage that you can drop the Lady and run the Warrior, which is an option. Warrior is really good, and that does help to bring back a lot of the damage. It also helps you with your healing. The healing when you're using the Warrior is noticeably better, and I like that a lot. So I tried using the Warrior with this setup, and I did like it. It was good. So that's one thing you could run. And then the next thing I wanted to run is one of the ways that I was dying pretty annoyingly was when I couldn't cast abilities, because performance is not good. It is not what it should be. It's not what I hope it would be, and I don't think it's what anyone hopes it would be. So with performance being bad, I thought, what's a way that I can get passive healing all the time? You can probably guess where this is going. I wanted to run something with a lot of health recovery. So the last build that I tried this patch was swapping out Clever Alchemist for Eternal Vigor and putting Balorg back on. And then I don't need any extra recovery because Eternal Vigor gives me a freaking ton, like probably too much. So I put back on the Master Bow. So now I'm running New Moon Front Bar, Balorg, and a defending Perfected Master Bow with Eternal Vigor on the body. So Eternal Vigor adds a line of stamina, health, and magical recovery. Then the 5th piece is Godly. It gives you 1 line of max health, and it adds 325 stamina and magical recovery when your health is above 50%, and adds 700 or 976 health recovery when your health is 50% or less. That's huge. This is an incredibly strong defensive set, which is kind of cool actually, because there haven't been good defensive sets in ESO for a long time. They've been so overshadowed by offensive sets that it's like, why would you ever run a non-offensive set? It just didn't make sense unless you were like specifically being a tank as a 1vxer, especially as a Nightblade. Why? And especially stamina, like anything stamina, and then especially stamina Nightblade. Running a defensive set or a sustain set was just stupid in the past. Like there just weren't good ones. Eternal Vigor has changed that. Eternal Vigor is really strong. It is a heavy armor set, which means that you have to run the 3 jewelry and then 2 heavy pieces, just chest and legs, which is fine. So I'm just running medium Balorg, and that's working really well. With this much sustain, doesn't make any sense to run Engine Guardian, so I'm running Balorg. And in fact, I found the sustain to be so good that with this setup, I dropped points out of max health because I didn't need it anymore, and I started using Artaeum Takeaway Broth. So now I get like 28k health in Cyrodiil and 27k stam. So I've dropped like 1k max stam by running Artam because it doesn't give you as much as Lava Foot, but I get a ridiculous amount of both stamina recovery. Like this is unbuffed too, right? So if I just hit rally, and then look at my character sheet, I get 2,463 stam recovery, and when I have continuous, that goes up to 2,666. That's crazy. That's so much sustain. I considered even running Sugar Skulls, but I really don't need the Magicka, so having more sustain is better than just having so much Magicka that I'm not going to use. Either way, after a certain point, it's kind of a dead stat, but at least it allows you to like roll a couple more times or just be a little bit more reckless, and that's kind of fun. But the health recovery, completely unbuffed, is 1,100, and then the magical recovery is also 1,100. This gave me so much flexibility when it came to using Cloak. I can almost permacloak, not quite, but I can go for quite a long time without running out of magicka, which means like if I'm in a really dirty situation that I have to get out of, I can go a long time without, needing anything. And if I make it behind a tree, I can not cloak for a second, and then I'm just like right back into it. So it's silly. It's really silly. And then the health recovery is just as crazy. Just to show you here, let's go into Mage's Guild. Just put on spell symmetry real quick, and we can get rid of some health here. And you can see my health recovery goes up to 2,450, which is nuts. And then, take that into account. Like if you're healing at the same time, it's incredibly difficult to even get below 50% health. It's silly. It's nuts. Like, and it's already gone. It's silly. So, it's a lot of healing. What's also really good about running Artam with this type of setup is Eternal Vigor is a set that really benefits from having max health, because you want to control this proc. This 5-piece proc, even though the health recovery is nice, it's not a burst heal. So you want, when you are below 50% health, you want to be alive for as long as possible still. Otherwise, the health recovery isn't going to help. If you're running 20k health, which no one probably is, but just as an example, you're running really low health, you're running 20k health in Cyrodiil. When you get below halfway, you're probably going to be at like 8k health, and that's low enough that you can get one shot. There are several ultimates and big high damage abilities that'll one shot you at 8k health, right? Or even 10k health, right? Like, I'm regularly hitting 12, 15, depending on how new the player is and how poorly they're built, 20k Relentless procs all the time. So people are going to be hitting you similarly. It's not unreasonable to expect that you're going to get hit by a 10k leap. And so having more health is better. Not only are you going to be able to take that hit, but the health recovery can kick in, and you're going to get a few ticks of it instead of just dying instantly. So for health recovery to even matter at all, below 50% health, you have to have a lot of health. And then also, you really don't want to be below 50% health anyways. Health recovery is a stat that heals you over time. It's better if you're just healed all the time and at high health, and then you also get this crazy amount of stamina magical recovery. You want to kind of build around that. You want to be able to use that instead of it just being there extra. You don't want recovery just for show. And even now, I do feel like I'm over-recovering, but there aren't too many ways to build back in more different forms of defense. So I dropped my high stam, high recovery food, and I went with Artam Takeaway Broth, which gave me more max health, which makes Eternal Vigor more useful. Gives me a little bit less recovery, but like I said, I'm super over-recovering already. And this setup feels really strong. It's way more defensive, but it's really strong. If you are playing in a group, I think using the Lady is a great option, or the Steed, both great options. Probably the Lady, though. If I was playing in a group of like 2 or 3 or 4, the Lady's a preference. I don't change my Mundus every time I go out with friends, so I basically keep it at the Warrior all the time. But having 30k health mitigates the burst. That gives me the mitigation that I wanted out of the Lady. I'm just getting it through max health instead of effective health. And by effective health, I mean like the higher your resistance, the more each point of health is doing for you. It takes longer to burn through heavy armor health than, medium light armor health. So, but having 30k kind of solves that problem. I don't have to worry about how much resistance I have nearly as much when I have 30k health, and then, below 15k, I'm getting all of this health recovery. Look, it's Thorpy. Hey, Thorpy. Yeah, look, now he gets a shout out in the video. Amazing. Just synergize that out of habit. But anyways, that's going to be distracting. So anyways, what was I saying? The setup's really good. If you're running it solo, I do recommend running it with the warrior, which is what I've been doing. It increases your healing nicely, which again means more hots. You're going to get a bigger burst heal out of rally. You're going to get better vigor heals, etc. And I think that's worthwhile. When it comes to, well, let's just talk about abilities, right? Oh yeah, with Eternal Vigor, again, I felt like I was being really tanky, so I'm running a lot more well-fitted, and even one sturdy, just so I can block more often. I find myself blocking a lot. Big abilities, small abilities, I block a lot. And blocking is a lot better when it doesn't cost all your stam. But that's one more advantage of being able to over-recover like this. When my stamina recovery is so high, I can afford to block more, lose more stam, and then just build it back up later. So that's working pretty well for me. I'm running all infused weapon damage still on this. I had to trait change this myself, so you need a lot of transmutes to run Eternal Vigor at first, and that can be kind of a pain, but again, I do think it's worth it. This is a solid setup that I do like a lot, and it feels really, really well-rounded. I feel like if you're dying a lot or you're newer to the game and Clever Alchemist is difficult for you to run, this is a great alternative. It requires some transmute stones and some, a little bit of time, but it's not bad. It's not bad at all. And I've been playing this for a while. Kind of tough to say how good it is exactly because I've only dueled a little bit in it. I've been mostly playing Midyear Mayhem. It's been going on for a week now. And Midyear Mayhem is always easier to get kills, and to feel out sets is less accurate during Midyear Mayhem. But this is a good set. I do recommend it. I like it a lot. And this is what I'm running right now. So let's hop into abilities really quickly. I'll just put back on shadow image here, and we'll just start front bar. I'm still using Camo Hunter, which is from the Fighters Guild tree. This is just passive Major Savagery, which is really nice. It synergizes well with surprise attack because you're trying to hit them from the rear. I'll get to that too. Relentless Focus is the big burst ability. You do 5 light attacks, it converts into Assassin's Scourge, and then you drop a fat Assassin's Scourge that, the tooltip here is 18.7k, completely unbuffed. It's pretty solid. Whatever. Let's just say we buff up, right? Then it's doing 23.3k. So it's a pretty solid ability. You have to have it. This is the must-have of Nightblade. Rally, the main reason that people run 2H. I still have a lot of people ask me, hey, how is dual-wield bow? Wouldn't that be cool if you could run dual-wield bow? And yes, we would all like to run dual-wield bow. It'd be very RP. It seems very assassiny. It seems like it's what you should be running, but it's not very good. And the main reason it doesn't have burst heal. It doesn't have flexibility. You don't have a good way of getting extra damage. You don't get major brutality easily. Rally has it all. So Rally is your main defensive burst heal and a really, really strong source of major brutality because it's basically passive. Surprise attack, the main bread and butter spammable. It's nice it stuns now. So, when you hit people from the flank, it sets them off balance and stuns them for 3 seconds. So you can combo that into Relentless really easy for just free pressure. A lot of times you can kill easy players without even needing to execute or in cap. And it's pretty silly how strong this feels, especially because if they get stunned, you've procced Minor Berserk. So that's pretty special. Then, of course, Incapacitating Strike, still the ultimate I'm using. It's a lot weaker than it was in the past, but hey, at least it still stuns. I find myself not using the stun that often since surprise attack stuns, but it's still nice to have as an option when I want, when I'm fighting someone that I know I have to like catch off guard, I'll use an Incap stun and I'll combo that into Relentless and then into Executioner. That's the big combo. On the back bar, Shadowy Disguise. People ask me a lot, Shadowy Disguise versus Dark Cloak. Dark Cloak is really good, and I think it's better if you're 1v1, which makes it, when you're testing it, if you're testing in duels, Dark Cloak is going to feel a lot better. But it doesn't scale well with the number of people attacking you. Shadowy Disguise does. Having, some extra resistance and a strong hot in a 1v1 is amazing, but when you're outnumbered and you have like 8 people chasing you, turning invisible is way better, right? The hot is going to give you 3k healing a second, but people are going to be attacking you that whole time, and if there's 8 of them attacking you and they're landing their hits, it's just not nearly as effective. If you can just turn invisible and stop people from attacking you, way stronger. So I still run Shadowy Disguise, and it's really good, and it's fun to use. I know a lot of people hate on invisibility because it's annoying to fight, and it is annoying to fight, but a lot of things in the game are annoying to fight. You have to not worry about that stuff and just say, hey, this is fun to use. I'm a rogue. I turn invisible. It is what it is. Leeching Strikes, still really strong, even though I'm borderline over sustaining. Leeching Strikes is unique in its sustain because it allows me to sustain while I'm running away. So if I'm sprinting or blocking, I'm not getting stamina recovery, but Leeching Strikes is still ticking away. So when I hit that extra hit at the end, or Leeching Strikes expires, I get a burst of stamina, and that essentially allows me to sustain while I'm running. But Leeching Strikes does a lot more than that. It also increases my max magicka, allowing me to take better advantage of my high magicka recovery. It gives me more total amounts of magicka casts, and that's really strong and kind of underrated. It also buffs all my healing while I'm on my back bar by 3%, and it also increases my ult gen. Every 4 seconds when I cast this, it gives me 3 ultimate, and since I'm running Balorg, that means more damage. And so Leeching Strikes really is just an unmatched piece of utility. I don't have any other way to get the passives from siphoning, because there aren't any other really good siphoning abilities that I want to put on my back bar as a stam character. So Leeching Strikes is kind of the best option there, and I feel like it's really underrated. Leeching Strikes is really underrated. You should give it a shot. It's really good. Shadow Image, probably the best kiting ability in the game. It takes a little bit of practice to get used to. People ask me hey, how do you keep track of how far away it is? When you put it down, it's green. You can see my ability bar is green, and then I can teleport back to it. Turns purple again. When I get out of range, it will turn purple on my bar. And so you can see right now I'm out of range, and now I'm back in range. If I cast it here, it'll put down a new one. But as long as I'm in range and it's green, it'll teleport me back. So pretty simple for me to keep track of, and playing with it a lot will make it really easy to keep track of, and just it suddenly becomes not a problem anymore. Venom Arrow versus Poison Injection. Man, I run a lot of weird stuff now. Venom Arrow costs less than Poison Injection and does more. I really feel like the changes to damage of the entire Poison Arrow tree have made Venom Arrow the much better option. It's the damage difference is negligible. If you're in a duel, it matters, but if you're not in a duel, it really doesn't matter. Zerglings are all going to die the same, and it interrupts snipers, it interrupts resurrections, it interrupts dark deal, it interrupts people putting down siege, and it stuns them as well and sets them off balance. So it's very strong. It really allows you, I say this all the time, so if you ever watch my stream, you've probably heard this before, but it allows you to win fights that you just couldn't win. Like if you've got a bunch of res bots and you have to go and bash them in melee range, you're putting yourself in a dangerous situation. If you're able to do it from range, it's much more consistent, first of all. Venom Arrow is less laggy than bashing, so really strong there. And it means that you don't have to get into a sticky situation where you're like in melee range. You know, like if there's a Destro ult on the body, for example, you don't want to walk in and melee it. You want to Venom Arrow it, so it's great. Resolving Vigor is the sort of basic heal over time. Every stamina character uses it because it's so irreplaceable. It's so strong. You basically have to use it. And so that's my main heal. Cast this preventatively. Cast this all the time, early and often. It just doesn't cost that much, and it's so good. You always want to have Vigor rolling. If you think you're going to take damage, cast Vigor. If you're taking damage, cast Vigor. If you've taken damage in the past, cast Vigor. Make sure it's always up. Unless you know that you're not going to take damage or are not currently taking damage. Otherwise, use it a lot. Better to err on the side of using it too much than too little is the general rule. But it shouldn't be the only thing you think about. You have to turn around and attack somebody at the end of the day, but most people undercast Vigor, so I'm just going to recommend that you cast it more than you think you have to. Temporal Guard. Backbar ults are pretty stupid overall this patch, and a big reason for that is because you don't want to cast a backbar ult. You want to cast your front bar offensive ult. It doesn't make any sense to waste an ultimate on backbar stuff. So it's really about what backbar ult gives you the best passives or some sort of get out of jail free card. Temporal Guard kind of gives you both of those. You get minor protection all the time, and then when it works, actually casting it can be pretty helpful. Going back in time is really useful. You just want to make sure that you're going back to a time that you had higher health and possibly also better stats, or that you have a potion for when you come out of it or whatever. Just be careful though, because it doesn't always work as advertised and can break and is then just stupid and dumb and can be frustrating. One of the buggier abilities in the game, so I tend to not cast it whenever possible, but there are times where it's like, hey, I'm going to either cast this or die, and so then I'll cast it, and then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, potions and poisons, enchantments, stuff like that. For enchantments, I usually run a poison on either the front or the back bar, and for that reason, I actually currently have the increase your weapon damage and like the Berserker glyph on both bars. That way I can do either a poison on the front or the back, and then the other bar has the increase your weapon and spell damage, because I always want to have that buff up, and so I'll switch off which bar the poison then is on. If the poison's on the front bar, my two favorite poisons are just double dot poison, really cheap and easy to make, or minor brutality poisons, which are really strong. I don't actually have any to show you, so you're going to have to look them up online separate from here. I also don't remember what the crafting recipe is, so I'm sorry. If someone could post that in the comments, I'll pin and heart that for sure. So minor fracture and so minor brutality is the main one. They can also concurrently do minor fracture, which is really nice, and that's a very strong damage added and defense taken. So it's a buff for you and a debuff for your enemies. That's my favorite offensive poison. But my favorite poison, which I also don't have one to show you, unfortunately. So again, if someone wants to post this in the comments, I'll love you forever. But I like to use double snare poisons on the back bar. So it is an immobilize and then also a slow. So it immobilizes for like 4 seconds and then slows them for that entire 4 seconds. So it's really funny because you'll hit someone with it, and if they're on their horse, it'll still affect them, and they just stop moving. There's no real animation to it. It's very difficult to notice that you've been snared in this way, and not a lot of people use them. So if you proc it on an enemy, they'll just start bashing, thinking that they're like that they're actually CC'd, but they're just snared. So like what you have to do is roll out of it. But people won't roll out of it. They'll just try and bash out of it. And it's hilarious. And it works, you can stop people on their horses, and it's amazing. Give it a try. That's my favorite poison. It's a double snare poison. It immobilizes and then slows them. And and I just put that on my bow. I've gotten several kills on like good players by snaring them in this way, they think they're lagging, and then you can go in and kill them with another CC because they think there's probably CC immune or already CC'd, but then you can hit them with an in-cap and knock them over, and it's really dirty. So, but it's not dirty in a cheesy way. I think it's just kind of funny because people don't expect it and it catches them off guard. So, I mean, isn't that what being a Nightblade's all about? For potions, I predominantly use tripods. I use tripods whether or not I'm using Alchemist or this setup with Eternal Vigor. Tripods are just so strong, and they increase your recovery in addition to giving you a big burst. So having Major Fortitude, obviously, with this much health recovery is pretty insane, and it really feels like it makes you close to invincible, and that's nice. I have a bunch of Invis pots. You can also get these from... I recommend not crafting these because they cost a lot to craft in comparison to just getting them from like the Alliance vendor. The Alliance vendor health pots now grant you invisibility too, and that's really nice. Obviously, I can cloak, but 15 seconds is unmatched, and it allows you to just get out of some dirty situations, and that's really nice. If movability pots, these are kind of the cool 1vx pot. They make you immune to knockbacks and like CCs and stuff for 10 seconds. I'm sorry. This is also a stealth one. This isn't a real... This is the move pot. But this one also makes me invisible. So this is stealth for when I'm snared and stuff and need to get out. And it also gives me magic so I can cloak. Here's the real move pot. Gives you health, stamina, and instead of giving you magicka, which you really don't need with this much magicka recovery on Eternal Vigor, you can do a movability. It gives you a big window of attacking where you're not going to get CC'd in the middle of your combo. People aren't going to be interrupting your in-cap because there's a cast time on it, which sucks. But yeah, this is pretty great. So you can go ahead and use these if you want. But between these and tripods, I feel like those are the best two options. Both are a lot of fun. Tripods I find to be more flexible and more useful all the time just because magicka is so great to have, and the extra major intellect is really strong. So it's not just a burst of health, it's the entire 46 seconds of just getting buffed by this potion. So, but both are good. That's actually it for potions. Again, with this, I do use Artaeum, Takeaway Broth, and then if I'm not using that, I'll be using Lava Foot. I do think it's worth using Artaeum specifically if you're really poor or just don't want to grind out Mother of Pearl, because Mother of Pearl are a grind. They suck to get. I usually just buy them. It's easier to grind out gold and then buy Artaeum Takeaway Broth than to craft it yourself. It's just, it's horrible. You can use Dubious Camoran Throne, but that health recovery does make a difference. So I encourage you to not use that and to just spend the extra money on getting Artaeum unless you're just trying this build out for the first time. But even then, if you're just trying it out to see if it's good, why get the discount food? Just make the build as good as it can be, because it really stacks up a lot. You know, you're getting all these multipliers on your health recovery. You might as well have more of it for just like 2 or 3k gold per every 2 hours or whatever. Not that big a deal. Let's see, anything else that I want to talk about? Just CP, I guess. So let's hop into CP. CP's changed a little bit this patch. Still kind of a work in progress. As the patch continues to go on and change and people change their builds, I'm mostly changing the defense tree. Everything else generally stays the same, but we'll just go through it really quickly. 56 Warlord, break free, you really want to reduce the cost of. 1 Siphoner, just to add 1 more debuff to an enemy. I took a bunch of the bashing focus because I don't bash as much anymore with the changes to bash. I want to have 120 in the Lover for wind running. I took a lot out of Arcanist because I have way more magical recovery than I need, and I put it all into health recovery. So I've got 64 Mooncalf, 56 healthy to get another 12% health recovery, 56 tumbling, and 20 Shadow Ward because I'm blocking a lot. I still use Tactician. This is kind of optional though. I feel like this is a less damage CP setup, but you get Tactician, which is really handy. But you can also get Tactician with surprise attack, so you don't always need it, but it's nice to have this as an option for stunning people. And off bounce is a great debuff to have on enemies. Precise Strike, 66 in Precise Strikes. This is like offense and defense because it's healing and damage, and it's the only one of these that is. So I do like things that give me both offense and defense. 20 to Piercing. This is my sync. 64 into Mighty. It's kind of the backbone of your damage. 66 Ironclad, 42 Resistant. You could probably even run less in this. This is a sync. 56 Thick-Skinned, 37 Hardy and Elo Defender. I had to put a bunch back into Thick-Skinned, not because dots are way stronger, but because Malakath makes dots obscene, and so I'm seeing a lot more dot builds, and they're really difficult to survive, so I just threw more into Thick-Skinned, took it out of Hardy, Elo Defender, a few other things, and just kind of came to this number. And I like this a lot. Unchained is really nice too. Gives you a lot of basically passive stem sustain. 32 into Quick Recovery. Want that extra healing. And dang, that's it already. Wow. Went through all of the CP. Magical. I'm sure there's a chance I forgot something. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to let me know in the comments. Again, with this setup, I'm using 3 points into health. But if you are using... I think there's a good argument to be made for between 3 and 10 points into health, just depending on how comfortable you are. If you're using Eternal Vigor, though, you want to have a lot of health. And so I get that using Artam, so I could take it out of here to get 27k stam. That's kind of the goal. I usually put either 27 or 28k stam in, and then put everything else into health. So the way I do it is I'll put up stamina points until I say like, hey, did I want more health? Okay, well, what is the stamina number I'm comfortable with? I'm happy to drop down to 27. So I just did it until it was 27 and then put in the remaining 3 to here. And you want to do this obviously with the food that you're using. So I think that's it. Pretty sure that's it. If it's not, let me know. I'm happy to answer questions in the comments below, or you can check out my stream, which I have linked in the description. And you can check out my stream. I stream currently every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so that's at 9:30 p.m. Pacific. I know that's pretty late for a lot of people, because it's like 12:30 a.m. Eastern. But hey, if you're Aussie or European, I've got your back. Sorry, East Coast peeps, though. That's kind of rough. But you can totally ask me in stream or PM me or just ask in the comments, and I'll do my best to give you a prompt and satisfactory answer. So please feel free to share the build you're using or how you feel about this patch. I love hearing that stuff and discussing it. And I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time.